Hi, listeners. We want to tell you about a podcast we're really digging. It's called Christopher Kimball's Milk Street Radio. Every week, they travel the world to find the most fascinating stories about food, including children who harvest cod tongues after school in Norway and a detective who tracks down food thieves. And on Milk Street Radio, you can always find the unexpected. The comedian who ranks apples using an elaborate 100-point system, the secret history of grocery stores, and how to eat your way through Italy. They also interview the most beloved names in food like Jacques Pepin, Sola Aweli, Jose Andres, Jet Tila, Ina Garten, Nigella Lawson, and Padma Lakshmi. Plus, co-hosts Christopher Kimball and Sarah Moulton do live calls with listeners and answer their questions about ingredients, techniques, and culinary mysteries. Like, why roasting a leg of lamb made one caller's oven explode? Ever wonder why your bread won't rise or your souffle falls flat? Chris and Sarah have the answers. You'll also hear from a rotating cast of contributors, including Kenji Lopez-Alt, Cheryl Day, Dan Pashman from The Sporkful, and Alex Ainuz, a French guy cooking from YouTube. Take a listen at 177milkstreet.com/radio or just search your podcast app for Milk Street Radio. You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Want to taste a flight of rare agave spirits at Rick Bayless's award-winning Bar Sotano? Or on La Barca Cantina, the storied taco boat touring New York's Hudson River? Or do you want to drink a special lager from the Maine Beer Company? Or how about coffee? Want to start your morning with a Mexican roast from the Genius Crew at Dark Matter? Well, you can do all those things and support Sacred in the process. Sacred is a not-for-profit that helps improve quality of life in the rural Mexican communities that make heritage agave spirits. We ask Mescalerixes what problems they have, what solutions they imagine to resolve those problems, and what resources they need to enact those solutions. Then we go out and try to find those resources for them. All of those businesses I just mentioned, Bar Sotano, La Barca Cantina, Maine Beer Company, and Dark Matter Coffee, all of them have special offerings on right now that support Sacred. To learn more about these supportive, creative ventures, visit sacredagave.org/fun. That's sacredagave.org/fun, because real fun is also doing real good.
Agave Road Trip. Agave Road Trip.
I'm Lou Bank.
And I am John Douglas of Pretty Decent in Louisville, Kentucky.
And this is Agave Road Trip, the critically acclaimed award-winning podcast that helps Gringex bartenders better understand agave spirits in rural Mexico. John, you and I, and a couple other folks, Max and Roy, you and I and Max and Roy did a trip through Jalisco a couple months ago, right?
Yeah, in March.
And I made us drive way too far between stops, so we had a lot of time to talk in between. Yes?
To be fair, that's probably my fault. You suggested I fly into PV, and I was like, no, I want to do a night in Guadalajara. I guess you still would have made the drive, but I could have saved Max and I 7 hours in the car.
7. Okay, so you would have reduced it by 10%. But anyway, yeah. So there was a lot of driving. There was a lot of driving and a lot of fun conversation and a lot of other stuff that we'll ignore, but a lot of fun conversation. I think so much about that dog. I
do too.
Anyway, yeah, I know. But a lot of conversation. And in the middle of the conversation, you brought up $30 chicken.
The $30 chicken conversation.
Yeah, and I thought, okay, this is a fascinating lens through which to consider the pricing of agave spirits, the pricing of tacos, the pricing of anything is through the lens of something that everybody understands, which is chicken. So set it up for me, John. What are we talking about?
Sure. A few months ago, there was a guest in our bar, and they had been to a restaurant I really like, a very forward, progressive restaurant that does a great job with Southern food. And the guy was talking about the half chicken entree he ate and how good it was, but he was almost offended that it cost $30. And this
What
little,
you say? Almost offended. Like, give me a picture.
I mean, like, that was so good, but why the hell was it $30 for chicken? Like,
Got it.
chicken. That was his thing. Like, not a steak, not, a snapper, but why was chicken $30? And this thing went off in my brain that was like, dude, what should the chicken cost? Like, let's talk about, like, there's a farm. The chicken has to be born. There's veterinary care for the chicken. There's shelter for the chicken. The chicken is fed. The chicken is eventually slaughtered, and that has to be done in a sanitary way. It has to be held in cold storage so we don't get sick when we eat it. The farm has either rent or a mortgage and property tax, and a farmer and a farmer's family, and maybe some farm hands who need to be paid for their work. And then it goes to a wholesaler who has refrigerated trucks and truck drivers and a refrigerated warehouse and warehouse workers and HR people and accounting people and bathrooms with toilet paper and hand soap and a loading dock and people who go out and sell the chicken to restaurants. And then that's before we even get to the restaurant and the dishwashers and the bussers and the food runners and the cooks and the bartenders and the servers and the management and the music and the internet and the heat and the gas and the electric and the linens and the tables and the chairs and the silverware and the glassware and the million other line item expenses that are on that restaurant's P&L every month. And I was like, what should the chicken really be worth if everybody along that supply chain is being paid a really fair, livable wage for their part of the world and where they live? And the answer is probably that chicken entree needs to be $55.
So, but you're also, okay, yes, A. B, there's chicken and there's chicken and there's chicken, right? And you're saying that this guy went to like the nice restaurant in town, or one of the nice, obviously there's more than one nice restaurant in Louisville.
Yes, there are. Yeah, plenty.
You can't just nod your head, John. This is a podcast. Nobody's seeing you except me. So, okay. So like that goes through my head. But then there was also a story very recently, and I think I sent this to you. Let me pull it up here. There was a story recently about a burrito joint in San Francisco. And yeah, here it is. Okay, so it's on NBC, and I'll put this into the episode notes. So this is back in March. So not it was when you and I were traveling. So it was back in March of this year, and the headline is $22 burrito helps San Francisco restaurant break even from inflation, owner says. Did you read the story? I sent it to you.
I did.
Did you read it?
Yeah, I did.
So this makes me think about, okay, here you've got a restaurant that's not like white tablecloth, and you've got different considerations. Obviously, San Francisco, the rent's going to be extraordinary, but this guy says that in order for him to just break even on his burrito, he's got to charge $22. And I guess my thought is, as I look at his entire menu, I think the cheapest thing he had on there that was actually a meal was $20 at a place that if I went into it in Chicago, I'd expect to walk out having spent maybe $10-12 with a drink, And I think in a way we're sort of forcing those restaurants to force the suppliers and their workers to take less and less and less because of presumed expectations on the part of the consumers. Now, obviously, this guy who was in your bar, it's not a presumed consumer. He is an angry consumer who paid for the chicken, loved the chicken, is still upset about paying for the chicken, right?
Right. And that expectation, we're kind of trained that if you go to big corporate drive-through spot, chicken sandwich is $2.50, and if you buy a second one, it's only $1. Right. And we're trained that if I call for pizza, I get two topping pizzas for $14, unless the driver doesn't make it to me in a half an hour, and then it's free. Which is, when I grew up, that was the rule. Hey, let's see if we can beat the Domino's guy.
You start building topes on your street when after you place the order.
And so we're trained to think that the chicken is cheap. We're trained to think that food is cheap. And I think that that's part of what informs this idea that a chicken entree should never cost $30 because, geez, I can go, to fast food chicken place. I can get a half a chicken for $7.99. So why is it
Right.
$30 here?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly that. But that also makes me think about the price of well drinks at a bar. Now you happen to run a pretty decent bar.
I do, yeah.
Fair.
Fair.
And congratulations, by the way, on your. It's a Tales nomination as of this date.
We're a regional semifinalist, yeah.
Regional semifinalist, and then Pinnacle Awards. You got 2 Pinnacle Awards.
2 pins from Pinnacle this week. Yeah, very exciting.
So you are this week, by the time people hear this, it'll be, much later and you'll have probably won all those awards. Anyway, well, I guess you did get the Pin Awards. Anyway, the point that I'm headed to is this. You're an outstanding bar. So how do you figure out pricing on your cocktails? And do you offer your customers something other than you're focused on agave spirits in Louisville, an odd thing to do in and of itself. But do you have something that is in essence like the equivalent of a well margarita that isn't using the cheap Oaxacan espadín as the base?
Yeah, you can get a tequila margarita at our place for $11. That the tequila is additive free, and it's not made in a diffuser, and it's not made in an autoclave. And so, you can get a tequila that's at least meeting some of the goalposts that we have for responsible agriculture and agave production, et cetera, at our bar. And so, as we record this, we just a couple of days ago passed Cinco de Mayo. And
I loved your post for Cinco de Mayo.
And that was our post for Cinco de Mayo, was basically a big block letters, Cinco de Mayo. And then in small letters underneath it is a great time to remember that, $5 margarita specials contribute to, killing pollinating bats and eroding biodiversity and driving low wages in Mexico, and all just for, brands to make a little bit of money.
Yeah. I just came back from a 2-week trip where I was driving across the USA, not across Mexico this time, though I still did crazy 7-hour days. And one of the stops I made was to Dancing Lion or Dancing Tiger? One of the two. Sorry, future Lou will clarify.
Dancing Lion Chocolate in Manchester, New Hampshire.
And so I was talking to Rich Lowry, who's the chocolatier there, and he starts the price of his chocolate bars at, I want to say the cheapest one I saw was $25. And you can get a $40, $45 chocolate bar, even they're all pieces of art. They're all beautiful. They're all handcrafted. But he even has sculptures that you can buy for $350. And that seems like a barrier, but you walk into his store in downtown. Hey, future Lou, what was the town?
Come on, past Lou. I just said Manchester, New Hampshire.
Cool, thanks. So you walk in there, and it doesn't matter how long you're there. Somebody else is going to be walking in and buying that chocolate. And there were people constantly in the 2 hours that I was there coming in, buying the chocolate. That was the most normal thing in the world. And it makes me think about, okay, I get that we need to have Oaxacan espadín for a certain market in the same way that, Popeyes is going to serve a purpose and the McDonald's chicken sandwiches are going to serve a purpose. But it also makes me think, when I asked Rich about that pricing, he said, look, I priced it like this, and nobody pushes back. When you tell them the story of how this is made, of where the cacao beans come from, of how pure these ingredients are of how this cacao helps to preserve biodiversity in this region in Peru, suddenly they're all in for the $30 because it tastes better to them.
Rich's customers, you might say, understand that his chocolate bars are a luxury item.
Yeah.
And I don't think that we understand enough as the general public that going out for a meal or going out for a drink and having someone make something for you and serve it to you and clean up after you and pour you water and welcome you and give you hospitality and service is also a luxury thing. When I first moved to Chicago in the mid-late 90s, there were only two kinds of restaurants. There was like white tablecloth, you better wear a jacket and a tie. You might be a little bit intimidated, and you go for a special occasion once or twice a year. And then there was like Greek diner, slice of pizza, hot dog stand that was like a place you could go every day. And there wasn't like an in-between where we expected Michelin star quality food for under $30 an entree. That's an entirely new phenomenon in the United States over the last 25, 30 years.
Huh.
And so with that erodes our appreciation of dining out at a nice restaurant as a luxury thing. And it should be seen as a luxury. Like, it is truly a luxury and a privilege to go out and have 8 or 10 different humans working in a restaurant contribute toward you eating a meal.
Huh.
And if we saw it that way, then we might understand the value. My belief is that as it affects agave spirits, as it affects restaurants, as it affects bars and restaurants globally, like as an organic whole of the hospitality industry, I think that this is like an existential crisis type of situation, and that the bar and restaurant industry can't survive the way it is if it doesn't address ideas of value and helping guests understand the value of going out to eat and drink, and helping that guy who is, it was delicious, but why the heck was it $30? Understand that like $30 is still a really low price point for all the labor and everything along the supply chain. And we talked about the chicken. We don't even talk about like the veg, the salt, the sauce, everything else that's on the plate with the chicken. And I just think that that is one of those issues that the bar and restaurant industry as a whole needs to get their hands wrapped around. There are people using service charges, and there are guests who are outraged about service charges being tacked onto the bill. And there are, you know, all across the line of food and beverage that exists.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's an interesting point. You know, it also brings me back to the idea that it used to be that just even having meat for dinner in your home was considered a luxury, and you'd maybe have it once a week. And now we're to the point where it's odd if for most people, I think it's fair to say, I mean, I haven't looked up the statistics, but I'm guessing it's fair to say that most people have meat most days.
Most people who we know. But I think it's also fair to say that probably, and I haven't looked up the statistics on this one, the overwhelming majority of the world can't afford a $30 chicken entree in a restaurant, right?
There you go. There you go. Yeah, the world is not just my neighbors. That's an excellent point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So to bring this back though to the idea of a bar, because again, this is a podcast that helps Gringex bartenders better understand agave spirits in rural Mexico. You know, I did an episode on this a year or two ago, and actually it had to have been within the last year because I know that I quoted our friend Michael in that. And one of the things that I would love to see more of is sort of that up-pricing opportunity. You know, to Rich's point, people will pay the $30 if you tell them the story, and for the chocolate bar. And I think the same could be said for that margarita, right? Like, okay, you can have the margarita, and it's a good margarita. It's great margarita. But you could then uptick that margarita. You could add, I don't know, I'm guessing you're not using Coscowine's Anniversario in your margarita, right?
No, but that would be a very good margarita.
And that's exactly my point. Like I want to see more of that. Like, here's the margarita, and then here's the Coscowine margarita, and the same with like your palomas, and I don't know cocktails. Help me out here, John. Like a Oaxacan old fashioned. You know, could it also, you know, could it be like a Guerrero old fashioned?
It could be, yeah, and it would be an expensive one, and I think that you'd have a small part of the population willing to pay it.
Right. And it's not the kind of thing you still need, I think. I mean, again, I don't run a bar. You do. I think you still need to have something that you think will work for the average consumer who's coming in, but then offering something for that person who really wants that next level experience.
Yeah, for us, if you come in our bar and you want a Paloma or a margarita, it's going to cost you $11. But then we do have menu cocktails that hit like a $15, $16 price point. We don't really get into like the extravagant luxury spirit realm of, there are bars that certainly do in town where, you can get a Van Winkle old fashioned for $75 or a Negroni made with vintage Campari for $35. And that's not really our thing. We're more of like a little neighborhood place, where we want the neighbors to come in and have a drink as often as they feel like they want to go out. Yeah.
Wow.
And so we do try to keep it affordable. Our cocktail menu, traditionally, to not to get too inside baseball, but traditionally most bars and most restaurants want their beverage cost to be 20%. So for every, if I buy a beer for $1, I want to sell it for $5. And that way my beverage cost is in line with what a traditional profit margin would be. We keep our cocktails right around there, but then our back bar is where we get a little bit irresponsible with our money. And some of those bottles, like if it's,
I love that description, a little irresponsible with our money. Sorry. So Cascaween, yeah.
We do. Like, so if for example, the Cascaween Siete Veces Diez, or, we just got a lovely from Minas private batch in, and these bottles cost us $150, $170 a pop. And if we're selling them at a 20% bev cost, then we're selling booze at, $30+ an ounce. And that is something that my customers simply wouldn't go for. And then that means they're not going to engage with our back bar and geek out on the thing that we geek out about. And so for us, like, we do sell our back bar pours at a very, very low price to the consumer, at a very high beverage cost, because we want people to come in and drink La Locura, and we want people to come in and drink Neta and Cinco Sentidos, and we want to tell them the stories of our favorite producers and our favorite people, and we want to share those stories with them, and we want them to get as excited about it as we are. And so if we priced those things through the roof, or at just a 20% bev cost, like most people would their back bars, we'd have a hard time with guest engagement.
Yeah, I get that. And, to circle back to what you said about that Pappy cocktail, the Pappy Old Fashioned or whatever you had said, that thought brings me oddly back to my days at Marvel Comics, where, as I look at the market for bourbon, it's gone the way of the collectors. And the reason people want that Pappy, that Pappy Old Fashioned, I mean, I'm not saying that Pappy Van Winkle is a bad bourbon, but when you think about the pricing of that versus the pricing of, I don't know, name another bourbon that's relatively as good.
Old Granddad Bottled and Bond for me, which is, we sell for $3 a shot.
There you go. So why is it that Pappy is so much more? And part of it is it's become this collectible.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and I certainly saw this at Marvel, where there was there was sort of this dynamic between the people who were buying our comic books because they wanted to read our comic books because they've been reading our comic books their entire lives. And then these people who entered the market and saw an opportunity to take some of these comics that sold out quickly because of an appearance of Wolverine, or because of a glow-in-the-dark cover, or because of whatever.
Were you in the Wolverine suit?
Well, I've got a hairy enough back to be Wolverine. But it ended up these in essence, investors, if you will, right, ended up changing the market so significantly, literally leading the market, that they priced people out who wanted to keep reading, and they were like, I'm not going to pay $25 for a $1.50 comic book. And so they just stopped reading. And it really broke the foundations of the comic book market in a way that I think we're going to see with bourbon, and in a way that, it's funny. We want, you and I very specifically want people to enjoy these beautiful spirits from these beautiful places made by these beautiful people, right? We want them to have this same experience that you and I have had visiting rural Mexico, and we want them to enjoy these tastes and flavors and aromas that we've enjoyed. The danger is when it becomes a thing like I feel Fort Lays is starting to get there, where people from the outside come in, they don't understand that part of it, but they understand people want it, they invest in it, and then it completely changes the direction of the market.
If you want to really tie the Van Winkle thing specifically back to Agave Spirits, Van Winkle is owned by a large international corporation. And if you're a bar owner or a shop owner and you want to get Van Winkle, you want to be allocated Van Winkle to sell, to have some, that trophy on your back bar, or to put in that $75 old fashioned, you have to buy lots and lots and lots of other product through the course of the year from that international corporation. So if you are here in Louisville and you walk into one of the big chain liquor stores, there are several parts throughout that store that you will see pyramids of Fireball and buckets of Fireball and bottles of Fireball. There is a bar in town that sells a $75 Van Winkle old fashioned that the Well Tequila is that brand's Well Tequila. And it's not a well-made tequila, and it's not, doesn't taste good. It's a cheap tequila. It contributes to all of the things that you and I don't want to see contributed to, like monocultural agave populations and the lessening of biodiversity in Jalisco and the eradication of bat pollinators, dozens of other issues, low wages for workers, etc. And that bar is effectively saying, we're okay selling a shittier tequila cocktail 365 days a year. They probably don't know how socially and economically irresponsible it is to sell that tequila, but they're okay selling a lesser tequila 365 days a year if it means they'll get 3 more bottles of Van Winkle to sell $75 old fashions to tourists in Louisville.
Wow.
And that,
wow.
And that is an education gap issue.
Yeah.
And so that is a thing where you have to go to those bartenders, and they need that's why your podcast exists, right? Is to educate Gringex bartenders on what their purchasing does. Will the guy who runs that bar hear this podcast? I don't know. It's I don't know, 5% chance he listens to it. Right. Maybe less. Maybe he'll be like, oh, some guy in my town was on this podcast and I'll listen to it. And if you're out there,
not just some guy, a Pinnacle Award winner, Award winner, John.
You're gassing me up now, Lou. But honestly, like, if you're listening, guy who runs that bar, and you know who you are, stop buying that tequila. Like, buy a better tequila, charge more for your tequila cocktails, put it at a 20% bev cost, and stop selling garbage tequila just so you can have another bottle of Van Winkle or another bottle of, Buffalo Trace Antique Collection Sazerac Rye this year. Like, and that bar, Lou, like, it's a beautiful bar. They have a lovely collection of Amaro and rum and gin and whiskey. Right. And then you get to the agave and the whole section is garbage. None of it is anything that you or I would drink. None of it is anything that, like, the people who know and love agave spirits, like, truly know and love agave spirits. Yeah. Not the collectors who think that 1942 is a great tequila, but the true agave spirits lovers wouldn't touch their back bar. But there's something great for every other spirit. And again, it's an education gap is all it is.
Yep. Well, there you go. I think unless you've got something else you want to add on top of that, I kind of like that as a conclusion, that, the $30 chicken and the what would you say, a $3 tequila well shot? $3?
Well, my bourbon is $3 in the well. I don't know what they're charging for their Sazerac tequila.
Well, okay, so whatever like $30 chicken equates to cheap tequila equates to the opposite of that. So $30 chicken actually equates to the good tequila, which also equates to the properly priced burrito in San Francisco. And if we want to live in a world that's actually livable, we need to accept that we don't eat $22 burritos every day. We don't eat $30 chicken every day, and we don't drink expensive margaritas every day. But let's find a place for that.
Yeah. And let's be willing when we do go to the place that sells the $30 chicken, or one day the $40 chicken, or the $17 pour of La Locura Tobaziche. Let's accept that that's what it costs, because there's a lot that goes into those products, and the people making them have I think, fundamental right to earn a livable wage for the hard work that they put in, whether it's a $30 chicken in a restaurant or a $17 pour of outstanding mezcal.
Now that's the wrap. That's perfect, John. Hey, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Agave Road Trip, and I hope we do it again soon, brother.
I hope so too, Lou. Thank you so much for having me. It was a real honor.
Likewise. Thanks.
Hasta pronto.
You've been listening to Agave Road Trip, the critically acclaimed award-winning podcast that helps Gringex bartenders better understand agave spirits, and rural Mexico. We're blessed with sound engineering by Roy Sierra and a theme song performed by Gabriel Oliveira and Marco Ricos. Sign up to become a road tripper and listen to more episodes at agaveroadtrip.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, please let us know. And if you hated it, well, I'm sure you'll let us know that too. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at Agave Road Trip. Agave Road Trip is a production of 10 Angry Pit Bulls, Inc. Agave Road Trip is powered by Simplecast. Thank you for listening to Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is food radio supported by you. For our freshest content, subscribe to our newsletter. To subscribe to the Heritage Radio newsletter, enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with Heritage Radio Network on Instagram and Twitter at heritage_radio. You can also find Heritage Radio Network at facebook.com/Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization using the power of educational storytelling about food to build a more equitable, resilient food system. Heritage Radio Network couldn't do that without support from listeners like you. Become a part of the world's most innovative community today. Subscribe to the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join the Heritage Radio Network family by becoming a member. To become a member of the Heritage Radio Network, click on the beating heart of our homepage. Heritage Radio Network can become addictive. Programming you hear on Heritage Radio Network might lead you to eat, drink, and listen to more programming on Heritage Radio Network. If you drink, please do not drink and drive. Drink responsibly, drive responsibly, eat responsibly too, and listen to Heritage Radio Network responsibly. To listen to Heritage Radio Network responsibly, wear protective earbuds. While wearing protective earbuds, do not drive, do not walk either. Sit in a comfortable chair. If that comfortable chair has a hard seat, please remember to stretch every 30 minutes. If you stretch every 30 minutes, please stay within your defined stretching capacity. And consult a doctor who specializes in stretching. If you don't have a doctor, maybe Dr. Ryan Acock, the Cocktail MD, can help you out. Thanks for listening. Agave Road Trip out.
Craft cocktails, from the classics to zero-proof drinks, are all around us. But what if we told you that craft cocktails are actually a relatively recent addition to the culinary scene? My name is Toni Tipton-Martin, and I'm the editor-in-chief of Cook's Country at America's Test Kitchen. I want to introduce you to a podcast mini-series I'm hosting called 100 Proof, The Journey of the American Cocktail. Over 6 episodes, we'll look at how mixed drinks offer us a window into what was happening in America during the dawn of the cocktail. We'll then take you to the present day to contemplate what forces led to our modern cocktail renaissance. And along the way, we'll of course be sharing cocktail recipes with you. Subscribe to Proof from America's Test Kitchen so you won't miss the first episode. It drops on Thursday, May 23rd. Again, that's Proof, Proof, from America's Test Kitchen. Cheers.